While this court was engaged in its deliberative process, the following posts were made by the Attorney General's office. But before I get that, let me just step back a bit and give you the chronology of preceding those posts. On Tuesday, November 7th, 2023, this court was presiding over a bench trial in the case of State versus Gordon, and that's case number P3 2021-0533A. That day, after both sides rested, the court began its deliberations. The court also informed counsel it would render its bench decision on Friday, November 10, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. The following morning, November 8, 2023, between 8:30 and 9 a.m., this court learned of a series of social media posts on X, formerly known as Twitter, by Attorney General Peter Neronha between 7:30 and 7:33 a.m. At that time, while this court was engaged in its deliberative process, the following posts were made. Quote, "Random thought before 8 a.m. bell rings. In the federal system, the prosecution must agree to a jury-waived trial in addition to the defendant. In the state system, only the defendant must agree. That's a real weakness in our state system and should be changed. Victims deserve justice too." The second post by Attorney General Neronha reads, quote, "When some judges never oversee a jury trial, it's not a coincidence." Attorney General Neronha is the head of the Department of Attorney General. He has the ultimate authority over all matters handled by the department and has direct supervisory authority over all lawyers who are employed by his department, including the two prosecutors who tried the case that is presently before this court, State versus Gordon. On Friday, November 10, 2023, this court delivered two bench decisions following criminal bench trials the court had presided over the previous 2 weeks. The court read its handwritten 30-page State versus Gordon bench decision prepared within 48 hours of the conclusion of the trial into the record. After delivering this decision, the court believes it was ethically bound to address attorney misconduct that this court believes was blatantly and recklessly in violation of the Rhode Island Rules of Professional Conduct, which is the code of conduct applicable to all attorneys in the state of Rhode Island, including attorneys in government or elected positions. After rendering its decision, this court made a brief statement addressing the posts made by the Attorney General while this court, who is the fact finder in a bench trial, was deliberating its decision. This court ordered the appearance of Attorney General Neronha as the author of the posts, as the head of the Department of Attorney General, and as the supervisor of all prosecutors who appear before this court to discuss these posts. The Attorney General, in his written responses to this court's order to appear, repeatedly characterizes the purpose or intent of this discussion with the court as a, quote, hearing, close quote, or, quote, contempt, close quote, proceeding. Those descriptions of my order to appear are false and misrepresent the simple words of the court's order. The Attorney General has made it clear he will not comply with my order to appear through numerous media interviews and a recently filed motion to vacate this order, which the court will address shortly. It is this court's position that the unprofessional, unethical, and false statements related to the integrity of the Superior Court bench trial process and the judges who conduct those bench trials made by the Attorney General while a judge was deliberating towards a decision in the only bench trial underway that week must be addressed. The Attorney General's social media posts, press releases, and media interviews are false, deliberate, and reckless statements attempting to disparage and impugn both the integrity of the Superior Court bench trial process and this court's integrity in presiding over bench trials. This is not a First Amendment or separation of powers issue. Rather, it is a blatant, false, and reckless conduct that this court believes is clearly prohibited by the Rhode Island Rules of Professional Conduct, which applies to all attorneys, including the Attorney General. The statistical data obtained from Superior Court records completely refutes Attorney General's social media post, quote, "When some judges never oversee a jury trial, it's not a coincidence," close quote. The Superior Court records establish that its judges presided over 388 jury trials, which includes 2 COVID years where trials were severely limited, and 109 bench trials conducted by 15 different judges over the past 10 years. Accordingly, bench trials comprise 28% of all Superior Court trials. Also, the 2 judges the Attorney General focused upon as doing an inordinate number of bench trials is clearly intended to mislead and falsely suggest that those judges are predisposed to finding defendants not guilty. These records establish that this court, in 31 bench trials over the past decade, resulted in 19 guilty or nolo dispositions, which translates into a conviction rate of 61%. Regarding the Attorney General's statement that this court never oversees jury trials, this data establishes that this court presided over 35 jury trials over the past decade, resulting in 21 guilty verdicts, which translates into a conviction rate of 60%. This data establishes the state's conviction rate is nearly identical in both bench and jury trials. The Attorney General's statement also ignores the fact that the 2 judges referenced were assigned most or all of the time to a county where a single judge handles all the criminal trial matters, whether they be trials by jury or bench. That statement of the Attorney General is completely false, reckless, and a disparaging attack on the integrity of this court and the Superior Court bench trial process.